Ladies and gentlemen, you were mistaken if you believed that Atlanta couldn't surpass itself in terms of hip-hop and love. So, buckle up. Completely incorrect. Imagine this. Puerto Rico trip of a lifetime. Drama so dense you could cut through the sun and palm trees use a butter knife to cut it. Instead, we had Kirk trying to play Mr. Peacekeeper and Jock turning into a ticking time bomb. But in the middle of the conversation, Kendra's name dropped like a nuclear bomb. Let me ask you a question. Now, what's worse? A trip marred by inclement weather, or having your trip ruined when you find out that your supposed friend may have been hanging out with your wife? That's right. That treachery cannot be bought back, but you can get a new umbrella. Jock didn't simply lose his temper, you know. No, he didn't silently sip his drink or raise an eyebrow. Politely, he blew up. I'm referring to anger on a reality TV level. The kind that forces manufacturers to deal with each other like scheming tyrants. Puerto Rico, put the beaches out of your mind. A full-fledged conflict zone of allegations, betrayed trust, and yes, shattered friendships is what we're dealing with. How did we get here at all? Let's turn the tape back. Let's now discuss how this trip to Puerto Rico, which was intended to be an idyllic getaway with sun-kissed beaches, cocktails, and perhaps a little innocent shade, abruptly transformed into a scene from a Greek tragedy. But with a lot more Instagram lives, opulent resorts, and lace-front wigs. Because believe me, Jock brought more than just sunscreen and swimwear when he packed his baggage. Oh no. Unresolved conflicts, brittle masculinity, and seemingly enough suspicion to fuel an entire season of My Kirk were all things he brought. Kirk arrived wearing his typical poker smile and exuding the confidence of a man who is aware of his guilt but hasn't yet chosen an excuse. Let's be honest now. In this place, for years, these two have been dramatizing one another. The endearing comedian Jock, who has too many children and too many headlines about baby mamas, is constantly caught up in some sort of catastrophe. And please, Kirk, there are more rifts in this man's reputation than a sidewalk in the sweltering July heat of Atlanta. We are discussing a man who has the ability to turn a routine family meal into an FBI sting. His name is never mentioned in relation to charity or mentoring. Scandal, treachery, and the kind of late-night behaviors that are blurred out on VH1 are the topics of discussion. It's like lighting a match next to a petrol can. When you combine these two in Puerto Rico with Kendra, oh, the irony. Because things did appear rather wholesome before to the vacation, Jock elevates his sibling Wami to a higher plane. Is that boys' academy? They are out there teaching children, imparting knowledge, and becoming emotional. Wami is opening up about living on the streets. Kirk walks in as the helpful uncle who just so happens to have some free time, as Jock sobs for not being the best role model. It's so moving and emotional that it almost convinces you that redemption arcs exist. However, let's be honest about hip-hop and love. The cries of people about growth are always merely a prelude to the impending catastrophe. For as soon as Jock wiped away his tears, he embraced his brother. The subject immediately returned to Puerto Rico. The vibrations of cumbia abruptly changed to "Nah bro, I ain't playing referee." Jock made it plain that he had no intention of singing peace songs on the beach. He had no intention of taking anyone's hand and pleading with them to relax. When pushed, Jock is the kind of person that flips the entire table instead of just pushing back. Vacations are therefore wrecked before they even begin when Rashida and Kendra are added to the mix. This is where things get crazy though. Because Kirk believed that while Jock was being defensive about not wanting to break up fights, he's over here grinning, reaching out, attempting to patch things up, and trying to act like the bigger man. This was the ideal time to play diplomat. Jock narrowed his gaze at that point. When Jock didn't see a peace offering, the entire atmosphere changed. He was witnessing treachery. He may have gone too close to home with the so-called friend he was seeing. After that, it made the accusation that left everyone speechless. Jock went straight to the point rather than merely saying, "I don't trust you." You had a relationship with Kendra. You spent the night with my wife. Now let's take a moment. Because accusing someone of having an affair with your wife is essentially the same as setting off a grenade in the realm of hip-hop and love. Group conversation. It's nuclear, not just drama. Who can honestly say they were astonished by Kirk's past? That's the worst part. This Kirk was once caught cheating in the most humiliating way imaginable. The same Kirk who has essentially established a brand, excuses, and apologies. Jaw's charge wasn't simply outrageous. It was practically plausible. Kirk's face twitched as around half of the crowd said, "Well, I mean, it is Kirk." That mixture of genuine guilt and phony indignation. I don't think Joe made that accusation out of thin air. You don't just wake up one morning and look at your friend and say, "By the way, I think you spent the night with my wife." That comes from whispers, rumors, and possibly a text you weren't supposed to see with anonymous sources buzzing about it. On Black Friday, receipts were being passed around like coupons, and Jock, in his dramatic flair, decided to use Puerto Rico paradise as the battlefield. Tear it all away. The hypocrisy simply writes itself at this point. Kirk is behaving as though he is above the situation, pretending that he was only on the trip to have fun, smile for the cameras, and admire the palm trees. Please, it's the same man who has an allergy to responsibility. The same man who couldn't remain faithful in a room full of nuns, if rumors are to be believed. Jock was certain of where to strike him, and he struck hard, boy. And the group became silent because there's no turning back when accusations fly that way. It was not going to be a vacation in Puerto Rico. A trial was on the horizon. Whether he liked it or not, Kirk was the defendant. The fact that Kendra has been riding for Jock, supporting him, and attempting to show her loyalty just serves to further complicate matters. She didn't ask for this storm, but now she's right in the center of it. Or depending on your point of view, perhaps she did. Whispering began. Did she and Kirk have a genuine relationship? Was this only the paranoia of a Jock? Or was this just another one of those scenarios when there is fire and smoke? How deep does it go, if it's true? A one-time error, a fling, or something that has been simmering behind Jock's back the entire time? There are countless options, and the more ridiculous the rumor, the more people want to believe it in this world. Here we are then. A journey that began with assurances of harmony, camaraderie, and escaping the negativity back in Atlanta is now perilously close to complete breakdown. Accusation versus denial, spouse versus friend, Jock versus Kirk, all of this taking place in the Puerto Rican sun. Cocktails are being spilled, cameras are filming, and the internet is poised to blow up the moment the video is released. And as soon as Jock said those words, "When you stayed the night with my wife," Puerto Rico's whole atmosphere changed. Ignore the salsa music and steel drums. This was no longer a holiday. This was the beachfront edition of court TV. Kirk appeared taken aback, but he managed to maintain his cool by doing the traditional thing that all guilty men do. He chuckled. Your frightened, false laugh when your eyes are screaming while you're attempting to convince everyone that you're innocent. Oh no, Jock too. For a moment, Jock wasn't buying it. He knew he had something on Kirk and was going to bring it out in front of him, so he leaned forward, his eyes alert, his voice increasing. Of all people, the streets have been whispering for weeks, so let's now discuss these so-called receipts. Rumor had it that Jock's phone had just received an anonymous direct message, packed with grainy images of late-night texts. Come on, don't tell anyone. I had a blast last night, perhaps harmless. However, it's less networking and more Netflix and betrayal when those messages are purportedly from Kirk to Kendra. Additionally, the date was just too coincidental with one of Kirk's enigmatic business travels where no one pays any attention, never comes upon a real invoice. And when this type of tea starts to leak, you know how fans feel. Fingers on Twitter went nuts. I need front row seats if Jock and Kirk are fighting for Kendra, one person commented. Kirk couldn't stay faithful if before the moment ever aired. The meme began to circulate, a picture of Jock shouting with the caption, "When you realize your bro might be your stepson's new stepdaddy, savage. You locked him in a monastery without Wi-Fi." And yet, true. However, it went more than that. Yes, there were alleged insiders. The same dubious people who somehow always have the most juicy information began to say that Jock had already confronted Kendra behind the scenes. They said she denied everything and swore fervently that nothing ever happened. But the problem was that her denial included just enough cameras zoomed in on Kirk's twitching smile, Jock's flaring nostrils, Rashidita's side-eye, so sharp it could cut through any hesitation. Just enough of that "how dare you ask me" attitude that Jock couldn't shake the doubt. Because in LHTL's world, even the strongest denial feels like an admission. Cut glass. Every second was pure reality TV gold, but Kirk's attempt to spin it rather than confronting the accusation directly. He began mumbling about trust and brotherhood and why would I ever do that made it even better or worse, depending on your moral compass. This is essentially code for, I don't have an explanation, so let me divert your attention with ambiguous phrases and hope you forget. But let's face it, nobody forgot. In fact, when fans retrieved old video of Kirk and Kendra being a bit too friendly at previous events, that hug that lasted a beat too long, they began to dig. That chuckle that seemed more like flirtation than friendship, all of a sudden, every video turned into proof, every grin became suspicious, and the timeline was disorganized. People began to speculate that this might not have been a one-time rumor. Perhaps this has been simmering for months, covertly amidst the turmoil of other people's scandals. It gets deliciously messy from here. According to reports, an unnamed buddy of the show leaked that the producers truly possess material that was never shown. Video of Kirk and Kendra standing a little too tall during an after-party, speaking in each other's ears. Near. Was it a harmless incident? Perhaps. Did it put Jock into a tailspin? Of course. Additionally, if the leak is accurate, the producers held off on releasing it until the ideal time. Like, oh, I'm not sure. A trip explosion in Puerto Rico. Is it a coincidence? Please, on this show, nothing happens by accident. Social media, meanwhile, was a battlefield. Team Kirk against Team Jock. According to some admirers, Jock was exaggerating and allowing his fears to destroy friendships. According to some, Kirk should have known better than to even glance in Kendra's direction because he had earned his terrible reputation. Conspiracy theorists then suggested that perhaps the producers had staged the entire incident to increase viewership. Here's the worst part though. The genuine rage on Jock's face, even if it was manufactured, wasn't acting. That man sincerely thought his friend had gone too far. Not to be overlooked in all of this is Rashida. Rashida, who has endured years of Kirk's foolishness, is unfortunate to be thrust into yet another scandal that she didn't cause. The thing about messy men is that they don't just ruin their own lives, they drag everyone else along with them. You could almost hear her thinking, not again, not in Puerto Rico, not with cameras rolling, down with them. And Jock wasn't going to stand by and said, tell me straight, Kirk, did you or did you not spend the night with my wife? That was followed by awkward laughter, shuffling, silence, and the deflection of the iconic Kirk move. Man, are you really going to let these rumors to separate us? Are you really going to believe the streets over me? That is, in my opinion, the weakest defense. Perhaps you should reevaluate your life decisions, if the streets are more credible than you. And while Kirk was busy trying to, the internet was already holding court, with users claiming to have seen Kirk and Kendra together on Instagram Lives, TikToks analyzing every facial expression from the program, and Twitter threads referencing evidence from months prior. The most damning response came from Jock himself, who didn't just stop at the accusation, no. He doubled down and began enumerating all the shady things Kirk had ever done, including every time he'd been caught in a lie and every time he'd embarrassed Rashida. The investigation was conducted by fans who treat love and hip-hop like it's CSI Atlanta. Even if everyone wanted to laugh it off, he had a point. Kirk's history was essentially one big highlight reel of treachery. If you can do it to her, why wouldn't you do it to me? He barked, and the room fell silent. Was this really so absurd? And then it dawned on them that Puerto Rico would not only be chaotic, but also disastrous, since once you accuse a man of having an affair with your wife, there's no turning back to have a drink by the pool. No. This was so, here we are in paradise, surrounded by palm trees and turquoise lakes, seeing two mature men sever years of friendship over whispers, screenshots, and late nights. Personal. This was war. The other people on that trip were merely collateral damage. If you thought this was terrible, wait until you hear about the consequences. Rumors. And to be honest, it's the kind of mayhem we adore, because hip-hop and love aren't about the music or the beaches. They're about mistrust, betrayal, and the kind of ugly drama that keeps you hooked to the screen. And just when you thought things couldn't get much worse, they did. Because after Jock, accusations are one thing, but when the dust settles, someone is going to have to pay the price. And believe me, the bill in Puerto Rico is going to be more than anyone bargained for. The villa fell hushed as he dropped his last bomb. But the calm was short-lived, because what transpired was not merely a disagreement, but the destruction of years of supposed brotherhood in front of cameras. Friends, strangers, and millions of people at home. You're letting producers fool you, bro. You think I'd sacrifice my wife, my family, and my business for one night? Reality TV no more. This was reality with a capital, or Kirk trying to save what little dignity he had left. The irony of that statement, however, was more devastating than Jacques' accusations because, let's face it, Kirk has demonstrated over the years that he will risk all of that for much less. The man could trademark infidelity. A one-night stand, please. You think I'm dumb? You think I don't see the pattern? My wife came to Puerto Rico, meant to unwind, supposed to settle down. But Jacques wasn't having it. He got up, chest puffed out, and paced like a man planning a fight or an appointment with a divorce lawyer. Enjoy. And now I hear from everyone but you. What happened? And you're meant to be my brother? Every word felt like a nail in the coffin of their friendship. Rashida, furious, finished sitting there with her arms folded, her lips pressed together, and her eyes rolling. Sakti could have used a lot of energy to power the villa's electricity since it was no longer just about Kendra. It was about Kirk dragging everyone into his mess yet again. And the expression she gave him this time was one of tiredness rather than wrath. The sort of expression that indicates, I already know how this story ends, and we've been here before. Fans weren't just watching though. They were taking sides, writing dissertations in comment sections, and coming up with hashtags like #J versus Kirk and #KendraGate. Meanwhile, the internet was going crazy. Theories abound on Reddit. Did Kirk and Kendra actually hook up? Was Jacques exaggerating? Or was this whole commotion a well-planned ploy by producers who are aware that drama sells? But here's the twist. People were emotionally invested, whether it was true or not, and perception is crucial in the world of hip-hop and love. However, the aftermath went beyond memes and fan battles, as rumors began to circulate that producers were thinking about turning this drama into a separate plotline. Off-camera, however, things were much darker. According to sources, Jacques and Kendra got into a heated argument later that night, with Jacques demanding the truth and Kendra sticking to her story. The entire new season focused on Jacques' trust issues, Kendra's denials, Kirk's reputation, and Rashida's silent suffering. But Jacques' anxiety was only heightened by her quietness, hesitancy, and little cracks in her voice, and once suspicion sets in, it doesn't go away. Kirk used the traditional PR tactic of damage management, telling anybody who would listen that Jacques was exaggerating and that rumors were really rumors. But Kirk's history speaks louder than words. You can't keep claiming innocence for very long until people start to treat you as the wolf that screamed out. But in this instance, the wolf wasn't just coming, had already consumed the entire trip. Online fans dug even further, locating proof from months prior, including candid photos, old comments, and suspicious